I think to a certain extent, the context has been set for us, Ujjwal, because in the first panel, you heard one of the panelists, Rhythm, speak about the fact that while things have changed, a lot of things have stayed the same. Because you have increased participation by a retail investor, and we cater to them. We speak to them every day. And the makeup of that retail investor has changed very dramatically. But if we're talking about the number of investors, we're still scratching at the surface when we're talking about the actual potential. And I don't think it's the individuals that are listening to us right now, Ujjwal, that we have to talk about. Because when do you really increase the breadth of investors in the Indian markets? When you go down to the smaller towns and cities, when you go beyond that. And the main question here is about democratizing access. How do you provide that?
Actually, if you look at last 10 years of Indian capital markets, I mean, I was actually building for global markets till 2016. And when I realized that access to markets in India is actually very, very underpenetrated. So it's people like us who can build for the Viksit Bharat should take the step. So we started building for it. And if you look at the last 10 years, I mean, access to market is one of the things that has been well served in terms of making sure that people have access to possibly if they want to invest in markets directly, they have access to a broking account, or if they want to set up an SIP in a mutual fund, they have an access to an SIP. Now, to put into perspective some numbers, for example, like we launched Share.Market like 1.5 years now. We are already have penetration in 99.99% pin codes of India. And that access to market is possible because of technology. I mean, and when I say technology, it's a very broad word, but if you go into the specifics, the ability to onboard a customer on a DIY basis, a very well drafted KYC regulations by SEBI ensured that tech-first platforms who actually understand how to make sure that ensuring the regulatory aspect of the market, integrity of the markets, how do you make sure somebody on a mobile phone or on a web can actually do their KYC in a flawless manner? And even if they are not very natively digital, they can still have great experiences. I think that's some of these things that we have cracked at scale. And that is why if you see the number of accounts that are growing, like for example, we have almost like 5 crore plus mutual fund unique PANs who are doing mutual funds. And
for the industry.
Overall industry level. And the total folios are 20 crores. While demat accounts have actually crossed, unique families or unique PANs have crossed 10 crores. Total demat accounts are in the range of 20 odd crores. Now, coming to the penetration part of it, like if we look at our numbers, I'll share some numbers from our platform itself. Like in mutual fund industry, for example, Jan 2025, 18 odd percent fresh AUM came from B30 cities. So AMFI has this category called top 30 cities called T30 and below 30. Like 18% of the AUM came from, at the industry level, came from B30 cities. On our platform, for that matter, 2/3 of our AUM came from B30 cities.
Oh, that's significant.
So that's an area where we have realized that as a platform, we have been able to bring access to market to a different spectrum, which means that today, when we see that incremental AUM on our platform, 2/3 of that is coming from B30 and beyond, while overall industry is doing at 18%, we have already actually are scratching the surface where we can further penetrate and make sure that access goes.
Okay, so this is very interesting insight, and I intend to speak to the mutual fund leaders that are going to come through later in the evening as well. I'm going to ask them about this penetration, because when you're talking about particularly the mutual fund industry, Ujjwal, you're talking about a predominantly distribution-led model, and we're talking about mutual fund distributors that are spread across the length and the breadth of the country that are essentially doing this. You're trying to disrupt that, kind of.
We are doing it DIY. We do more than 20 lakhs SIPs
so that's
a month.
The point. Exactly. So you're trying to get people to go direct, which is not something that a lot of people are doing right now. That shift will happen. What I'm trying to get from you is, do you anticipate that the next major leg of growth is going to be through this and not through that? Or do you think that a combination has to happen?
See, I think it'll be a combination of both. See, wealth or overall like access to markets. When you talk about it, it's India has been largely a distribution-based like country, right? Now, if you look at distribution purely as a enabler to give access to market, but if you look at distribution from a perspective that they bring awareness, I think there will be an hybrid. I think platforms like us actually have taken a longer approach to this problem statement, saying that while we solve for access to markets, and we are seeing the green shoots where typically you will expect a physical touch point to get into SIPs, but our platform, we are able to make that person and trust the platform and do their KYC and set up the SIPs or open a broking account. Our next actually focus areas is actually how we take that wide space of providing access to knowledge and access to research at a massive scale. Because that's a problem statement industry has not solved. I'll talk about a very unique number that you see, right? 5 crore PANs doing 20 crore folios, which means access to fund manager brought a lot of confidence in people, so they continued to invest more in SIPs, right? But more than 12 crore PANs, 20 crore demat accounts, average active user on a yearly basis around less than 4 crore.
Yes.
So access to knowledge and access to research is still not there at a democratic level. I think that's a problem statement that technology, computer science and AI will solve. And that's also a problem statement we are solving while we are solving access.
It's a problem that we're also trying to solve through the shows that we do. Incidentally, we do a couple of shows that directly talk to the mutual fund investor, and we've gotten a lot of traction. We get a lot of traction, as Sanjay sir was pointing out earlier today, on the query shows that we do as well. So, and people calling from various parts of the country that you probably hadn't heard of before, right? So we get calls all the way up from Kashmir as well as down south, and a lot of calls down south as well. But having said that, what I'm trying to get next is, and you spoke about this, you spoke about access to information. Some part of that is what we're trying to do on an ongoing basis, but you need so much more than that. What you're trying to do is create a differentiation from what somebody else might do, in that you're providing information that is cutting edge, that is easily accessible, and that is insightful, right? What is the role that you think artificial intelligence will play there? Because this is a little bit of a developing area. We don't know where this is going yet.
So we have been using AI for a while. So we actually categorize AI across a couple of broader categories. So one is how AI enable access to markets, as we were talking on that aspect. The other is access to knowledge, which is an opportunity to solve, access to research, access to insightful information. And third is access to personalized experiences on a DIY basis. And those experiences not only is about providing contextual experiences, but also about providing trust and safety.
Yeah.
So when it comes to access to market, if you know that on KYC, one of the biggest bottleneck was liveliness detection. Like a lot of innovation has happened on machine learning models to innovate on that, and that is why the entire KYC journey is largely foolproof because of the ML models that have been deployed for liveliness. So that I think will continue to improvise as an industry level. Regulators will further build confidence on those journeys. So I think access to markets will be benefited by AI. Then comes to access to knowledge and access to information. There, the interesting part is AI is a very natural extension to quant research. Now, we have been building quant research platforms since 2016. To make it available to retail investors. Because institutionally, if you see, there are a lot of, globally also, it is well served by most of the institutions to affluent family offices and etc. But how do you make that available at retail level? Same, like institutionally, that quality of information, but because your reach is at a consumer internet scale, you can build a great business also while you provide that right information. I think that is where we are extending our quant stack to enable AI, because quant research uses time series data.
Yes.
So we ingest data across the board from all exchanges, etc. And when we look at the natural language, when it comes to social media, when it comes to exchange filings, which are still in PDF formats or unstructured data formats, we have started able to ingest that into our systems and bring that into an actionable information form. So we just launched sentiment factor also on those analyst sentiments. So I think AI is helping us to actually even leverage unstructured data, refine it to a level. Right now, we are using it under our research models. At some point, some of these will come on in our chat experiences and etc. So I think AI will help on that access information.
And from your perspective as a business, this is going to be that one factor that makes it remunerative for you as well, because you're providing this perhaps as an add-on, right?
Yeah.
And so to that extent, build on that for me. And the other aspect also is that a lot of players entering the space and a lot of large players, traditional players making that pivot as well. Is the space big enough for everybody to play in? I certainly think it is, but give me your perspective.
See, I think when the first wave of like change or the status quo of capital markets got changed. See, I actually started in Bombay. Now I'm in Bangalore.
Yeah.
So I see the challenging of status quo between Bombay and Bangalore itself.
Yes.
Right? I think from a first principles, if you see, at some point, somebody in last 10 years, the biggest status quo was challenged, that the fact that if you build broking business or distribution business as a tech-first DNA, and while you're still very affordable on pricing, which is what called discount broking in today's world, you can still build a great business and you can serve the customers, right, with the great experiences. I think the phase 2 of this is how do you, within the same affordability, can you give access to right information, research? I think that opportunity is big for us to build, and we are building it since 2016. I mean, as a group, we are really bullish to build for the long term. But at an industry level, I think a lot of these players are having their own nuanced view of demographics, and they're solving for that. I think there's a space for all, because at a customer level, it's a very heterogeneous segment. It is not like payments, right? Your UPI experience can be same for somebody in South Bombay or somebody in Kanyakumari, right? But in wealth, experiences can be democratic for all, but product differentiation happens. So I think different segments, you can create different product differentiation and can build a market for that.
Okay. So I'm always curious to speak to people like you, because you're ultimately you're catering to an audience that is essentially the same. We're trying to expand our audience as well. But paint a picture for me in terms of the conversations that you've had in your own boardrooms, right? What is the opportunity that you see? Because you're talking about, and you named you took a few numbers. 5 crore is the unique PANs that are in mutual funds right now. We're talking about 80 crore PANs that are currently available in India. So we're talking about a massive opportunity, but we've also established that this is a country that is growing. This is a country that's going to have significantly more earning members down the line, perhaps even in the next 5 years. We're talking about disposable income that perhaps next year, just by that tax break, is going up by 8 to 10%, even if you don't account for the increments that will come through. And I hope everybody is listening, right? For me as well. But having said that, what is the opportunity in the near term and over the next decade?
See, the near term itself, I think there is still a lot of growth to be there, purely from an access to markets point of view. I think while we have almost reached all PIN codes, but within each PIN code, if you map the entire demat account, total SIPs in the country on a heat map of the country, you will realize there's so much of under-penetration in some pockets and over-penetration in other pockets, right? So well-distributed access to market is still an opportunity to solve. And the other thing which I think even panelists before also talked about, the population is young, right? So this business is not about when customers come to your platform, investors or traders come to your platform, it is not about how they will become your paying customer in next quarters or so. It's a gradual cycle, right? So from an awareness building, the platforms were building with a long-term view at making sure these people engage, understand markets, and gradually build their trading portfolio or investing portfolio. So the number of people who are going to be employed, people moving out of college, per capita income increasing. So overall, both from like the number of people getting into markets and the existing people and the people who are already accessing markets, their ability to invest will also grow. So that is why you see the SIP numbers are growing, while number of PANs are still at 5-6 crore, but SIP overall numbers are growing very fast. So I think all of these adds up to the whole opportunity for building for markets. And obviously for the longest time, this sustained behavior change of like since post-COVID, that gold moving beyond traditional assets to financial assets, I think that has become a mainstream play. Like people have realized that if I invest with a long-term view in equities and in markets, I think I can have a better wealth creation probability.
And even in digital gold, you're talking about, and I'm talking about ETFs, right? People are buying into the idea of buying digital gold. The numbers speak for themselves. But let's talk about also the regulatory aspect, because in a lot of what you're building and your peers are building, this is a space that the regulators and the other stakeholders are also looking at in an ongoing basis. They're trying to fix problems as they occur. How important, in your opinion, is that collaboration in order to create the best possible outcome?
See, I think the child inside me is so has so much of fantasy to build things. But when you build for markets, regulation is your like first call of duty, right?
Yeah.
I think because you work with real people money. I think that way, that whole that principle to principle trust that SEBI has built with innovators, right, is brilliant. I mean, when we started in 2016, I started building this thing called curated portfolios on broking called Wealth Basket. I'll give you an example. And when we started thinking that right now when we look at research brokers provide is like buy, hold, underweight, overweight kind of individual stock research. Most of the Bombay is like you say so many research houses. Nobody is actually giving at a retail level taking a set of stocks, scientifically weighing these stocks like a PMS and putting out as a research report saying that, okay, if you want to invest in a pharma sector, these are the set of stocks. We have done research together and we think with this weight you can build. Now, when we started saying that under research analyst model, you can actually publish portfolios, right? We went till the SCRA Act and saw that a group of securities can be also clubbed together. But if you look at research analyst regulation, there was not something which was clearly documented. Yeah. But what we believed is that our intent is to enable, empower, and investors to actually have a better research in form of portfolios. If your intent is right, regulators will engage with you, work with you. And I think last update in the circular, the model portfolios have been added to research analyst regulation. So a part of the innovators and the builders of today in markets, I think we believe that if your intent is toward the end consumers, regulators work with you. That's a great place to be as a builder. The second part is that as we build, everybody see pockets of like problems come, for example, FNO, like futures and options for that matter. Now, you see FNO as an instrument is very, very important for the markets because it's a great leverage instrument to hedge, to speculate, as long as you know what you're doing. Right. But a lot of these retail investors and traders ended up coming to markets and started looking at option buying as a way to actually make
build
fast
wealth.
Money.
Yeah.
And without understanding that it's a leverage instrument and what it means. Sure. Now, all the current regulations that SEBI is doing and have brought, and there are a bunch of them that's going to come in phases, I think it's great for the category to be protected because the instrument is great. The investor, the trader needs to know why they are getting into FNO. I think those hurdles are important for the long-lasting nature of the product, right? So that way, regulators coming at different points, identifying problem statements, taking a consultative approach to engage with stakeholders. I think we are doing great in that, in the way regulators are working. I think going forward, I think the balance between not knowing whether I'm regulatory right, I think the first call of duty should be, are you working in the interest of the investors or traders? I think regulators work with you. So you can innovate and work with SEBI.
Fantastic. I've really enjoyed this conversation. Please put your hands together for Ujjwal. Fascinating. Thank you so much, Ujjwal, for taking the time. Pleasure speaking with you.